Hello, my name is Donna Granata, and welcome to this segment of Focus on the Masters, Portrait of an Artist. Focus on the Masters is a nonprofit arts education program documenting many of the artists who reside within Ventura County. We document these extraordinary artists and their work through photographic portraits, audio and video interviews, and biographical research that encompasses each artist's experiences, artistic reflections, and development. We then present this work to a broad public through extensive educational programs like the one you're about to see, along with our Learning to See youth outreach, a monthly Meet the Artist series, regular exhibitions, and a quarterly newsletter.
Our guest is realist painter John Nava, renowned for the tapestries created for the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels in Los Angeles. Welcome, John, to the program.
Oh, thanks.
How would you describe yourself as an artist?
Well, I think I'm a painter. Primarily, I'm a painter.
Did you realize you were going to be an artist at a very young age?
I don't think I knew I was going to be an artist. I knew I was interested in art. I'm one of those people who, from when I was in kindergarten at first grade, I was always the artist in class.
Were your parents supportive of
Very
you?
much. My parents, both my brother and I are both artists, I guess you'd say. My brother's a filmmaker. And we always did all kinds of artistic things. And my parents were always completely, extremely supported. My mother particularly, I think, was very impressed by it. I think that's another thing that was influential, is that they clearly valued that kind of creativity.
Gosh, you're very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, they didn't discourage us.
Tell us a little bit about your formal education.
I went to city schools in San Diego, and then I went to UC Santa Barbara as an undergraduate student. And then when I got out of college, by some mysterious happenstance, I got a job teaching at a university in Canada. And I went there and I taught for a couple of years. And then at the University of Lethbridge, which is south of Calgary. And then I decided that I wanted to get a master's degree, or an MFA, and I also wanted to live in Europe. So I found a school that offered an MFA in Florence, Italy, and I went there and I got my MFA.
Tell us a little bit about your experiences in Italy.
Well, I knew enough about what I was doing at that point to know that I was very interested in drawing and in classical painting and Renaissance painting particularly. So Renaissance, the Florence is clearly a center of a lot of that. And so I very cleverly schemed to be able to spend time there.
Now, did you go back to teaching once you returned from Europe?
Yeah, I mean, we took some time off and we lived in Spain for a while, and then I got a job teaching at the University of Redlands in east of Los Angeles.
And did you enjoy teaching? Was it a stimulating experience for you?
Yes, I love teaching. I liked everything about being in the classroom with students.
I remember once you told me that you drew a student every day.
I always felt it was important, if you were going to teach, if you were going to have credibility as a teacher, that they should see that you know what you're talking about, or you can do what you're asking them to do. And so I would have a student model for me, and I would spend an hour, and I'd make a portrait drawing. And I made it a portrait because I wanted to make a kind of a drawing that had a sort of test element where not only was it a decent head and a decent piece of structure and a decent piece of volume, but it also had to look like this person. And so that made you stay extra serious about your work. And that became, as I started to do that, that became my favorite part of the day. I mean, I looked forward to when I would have my class meet and I would have somebody sit for me. And I realized that I really just enjoyed the sheer activity of drawing, of scrutinizing carefully and making marks and making a drawing. That was my favorite thing. One of the things that led to my being involved in the new cathedral and the tapestry commission I got was that I was going every week to a drawing class in Santa Barbara. where they had several models modeling. This art woman named Linda Ekstrom, who's an artist, and she ran the class, and she was aware of my work and stuff. Unbeknownst to me, she was also on this search committee for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, and she recommended me, put my name up to be considered, and that's how I connected to that.
Originally, the commission was not tapestries.
The commission was originally conceived as a frieze of line drawings that were going to be literally etched into the walls of the concrete. And then they would be seen as a very delicate shadow kind of line. And I was developing some maquettes for further presentations when they called me and said that for acoustical reasons they had to do something about the reverb they had in the building. And they'd come up with the idea of doing big textile decorations and to make tapestries. Mm-hmm. So they said, well, do you do textiles? And, you know, I'm sorry, but it's going to be tapestries. And I said, that's okay, I can do that.
Not knowing
I knew nothing about tapestries, nothing at all. But I knew enough to say that I could do it. So then I started doing a lot of research and learning about it.
And actually, the technique here is really old world technique meets the 21st century in many ways.
Well, it's very interesting because I had done some projects using computers, and I knew a little bit about, computer graphic technology. And when I began to do research, I found that the first digital machine that had ever been made was the loom, was a Jacquard loom. And it ran on a file, on a script that was like a player piano scroll with holes punched in it. And it was just exactly a binary on-off, yes-no system. In the Gobelin factory in Paris, they still have these scrolls from 300 years ago that you can run through a machine and they will weave stitch for stitch, line for line, exactly the design that was done in the 17th century. Mm. Now they have electronic Jacquard looms, which have just basically electrified this process. So by having some handle on that way of constructing images, it allowed me to believe that I could figure out a way to make something weave.
And tell everybody about the process of compiling these images, that you didn't actually paint these groupings together. Mm-hmm. You painted the heads separate, the hands separate, the bodies in many cases separate. So share with us.
Well, the whole thing was being done on the fly. When I didn't know when I began how many figures I was going to have to do, and it ended up being 135 figures, which I had to do in 20 months. And my original idea was to do a full-out painting, completely rendered head to foot, life size, of each figure. But the time it takes to make a picture like that, I just didn't have enough days, enough weeks of time. I had to do an average of 2 figures a week for 20 months, in addition to figuring out all the weaving problems. So so I had to figure out a shorthand way to do it. And so I got the idea of doing it piecemeal. So I did all the head, the central idea in the image is that the heads and hands, the portrait elements of the figures are very vivid and very clearly rendered and realistic, so that the people who are in the church look on the wall and see something that they can feel a very immediate connection to.